let's look at the oncoming wave of detransitioners, because it will happen. It will happen, I think, sooner than any of us are expecting, because I was expecting maybe 10 to 15 years, but it's already starting to come out. These stories are starting to become more public and easily accessible to the mainstream, and there are some that have actually gone viral on Twitter that we'll look at. Before we go into any of that, though, there is a recent article for us from Connor Tomlinson that's on the website. It's premium. If you've got a silver membership, you can check out the audio track where he's talking about the academic assault on English literature, and I do think the academic sphere is assaulting a lot of things in modern life, not just academic literature, but also a lot of stuff that's coming out just in social spheres as well, because I see a lot of this whole intellectualizing around trans issues is coming from the academic space, and I don't think there's really much of an argument against that. Anyway, but moving back on to something that we touched on in that last segment, we mentioned that the NHS has quietly removed the word women from its menopause page, because not every woman... it's not only women that get menopauses. God, you absolute bigot. And they say in the Daily Mail, NHS ditched the term women and woman from its menopause guidance, despite ministers promising to crack down on woke gender-free language in medical advice. And once again, ministers proving that they are all bark and no bite, because they never actually do anything.
Well, specifically Sajid Javid as well. I think this is like the fifth time or something. He's given a speech where he says we must crack down on wokery in the NHS. It's just like,
well,
we're waiting.
Do we see both of his hands when he's making these speeches, or he's got one behind his back with his fingers crossed?
We must stop them, I swear.
Oh dear, oh God. Yeah, last month the NHS Digital revealed that they'd quietly scrubbed all mention of women from its landing pages for ovarian, womb and cervical cancer as well.
Do you know they're trying to remove women? Yes, Posey.
Yes, they really are. I mean, I'm sure that prostate cancer will still have reference to men for now. Actually, that's a good point. Double check that for me. Jamie, bring that up. And the move was condemned by Health Secretary Sajid Javid, who said common sense and the right language should be used to give people the best possible care. And given that he keeps saying this stuff and nothing ever actually gets done in the direction that he's saying, he's either lying to the public and behind it, or just completely flaccid and neutered as far as public officials come, for getting the job done that he wants to get done. So I don't see why I would trust anybody in the UK government to do anything that they say at this point. I know we're getting that British Bill of Rights relatively soon, but I don't necessarily know if I trust them to be able to pass something like that in the way that would be necessary here. But anyway, let's just double check it and we can see the page itself. This was post May 24th to 27th, because that seems to be when they actually did change the page. If you scroll down, you can see menopause is when your periods stop due to lower hormone. This usually happens between the ages of 45 and 55. Can sometimes happen naturally. No mention of women anywhere on this page. Go to the next one. And this is May 24th. In the very first sentence, the menopause is when a woman stops having periods and is no longer able to get pregnant naturally. And this sort of stuff is actually relatively important, because not being able to define which sex it's happening to, like the menopause, on a biological basis of, yes, this happens to women.
Did you know knowledge is important in medicine?
I know. Who would have thought? But it really does make the issue quite confusing for people. If someone's, nowadays, if you're 13 years old and you're a girl and you're going through all of these changes and you want to know what you can expect going into the future, you might drop on the menopause page on the NHS website and think, oh, it must happen to boys as well.
Just to answer your question, prostate cancer does have mentions of the word men.
So. Oh my goodness. So at least young boys are getting appropriate warning of what might happen to them in the future. And of course we've got, because it's been Pride Month, we've had every single company bowing down to the regime to let them know that, yes, they do have the correct opinions. And this is the most recent thing that came out, which was Halifax, the bank, tweeted out pronouns matter, hashtag it's a people thing, with this image of Gemma, she, her, hers. And I'm sure if we were able to get a zoomed out image, I would be able to have told you what her pronouns are without needing them specified on the name badge. And also the whole point of the name badge is I now know your name. I can refer to you by name if I so choose.
I'd rather not.
It's
How can you actually use someone's name if they got a name badge, like in a bank or a restaurant?
I don't say their name. I don't use pronouns. I speak in very short, cut-off sentences to say, can I get this, please? I just want to deposit this money.
Can I have
Thank you. Yeah.
I don't need to say Gemma at any point.
Yeah, exactly. But but apparently this is important, and some people pushed back against this in the next one. If you scroll up here, we can see that somebody was talking to them. It does nothing of the sort, you know. There's no ambiguity about the name Gemma. Obviously, it's a woman I'm talking to. And then Halifax just responds, you know, saying pronouns matter, but apparently customers don't matter, because they say we strive for inclusion, equality, and quite simply in doing what's right. If you disagree with our values, you're welcome to close your account. This is not going to win loyalty with customers. If you disagree with us politically, just piss off. I mean, it's a daring business tactic.
I mean, we joked about it yesterday. It was just like, for inclusion, we'll exclude you.
That is what it always is. And, of course, we need to take a look at the Harwood hot take, because the man is a bad take machine. I don't understand why. How would you do the Tom Harwood voice? I don't understand why anyone would be annoyed by people voluntarily adding their pronouns to name badges or email signatures.
This sounds like he's like hungover, let's be honest.
This is also my H-Bomber guy voice. Sometimes it's genuinely useful. No, it's not, Tom. Unless the person that you're talking to is an obvious ideologue, in which case they typically have visual indicators that light up like a neon sign from a mile away. They've got the nose piercings, they've got the multicoloured hair, they're probably wearing dungarees in the middle of summer like some kind of farmyard hick. You can pretty much guarantee if you run into someone on the street or in a shop that this middle-aged, obvious woman is a woman.
To be fair, I do agree with him in one aspect, though.
Oh, yeah?
Sometimes it is genuinely useful. I mean, whenever you get an email or business card with someone with, you know, pronouns on it, asking if you'd like to pay money to them, it's just like, no, you're retarded. And then you move on. I mean, I don't know if you've had that experience. You've just been got to give this business card or something.
That's
no, we won't do business with you, actually.
That's the thing. It's why...
I trust you with my money.
This is my answer to why anyone would be annoyed by people adding their pronouns to these things, which is it's a display of political partisanship.
But also just intellectually lazy or weak, because no normal person would do this as well.
Well, that's the thing. But that display of political partisanship, it's why people get so annoyed and make the argument, oh, pronouns in bio isn't a real argument. Yes, it is. Because from the very fact that you are feeling the necessity to put your pronouns in your bio tells me a lot about the rest of your opinions on reality and your probably your general personality in general. And it's very interesting that it is the display of political partisanship that I can deduce so much purely from whether you feel the need to display your pronouns publicly or not. And it also just pretends like we can't tell. Like it's the whole, like, who are you going to believe, the badge or your own lying eyes? So that's why people would get a little bit annoyed. Tom, not that you'll listen. And then we've got Disney using trans iconography in this new advertisement for the Baymax show, which I'm sure will be on Disney+. This is all just part of their not-so-secret gay agenda. Let's just play the clip so you can get a measure of this.
Excuse me, which of these products would you recommend?
Well, these are the tampons I usually use.
Thank you.
Now,
I prefer
like,
pads.
Wally?
They're more comfortable for me.
Thank
okay?
you.
I always get the ones with wings.
Thank you.
Get them scented and bleach-free if you can.
Thank you.
Yo, my daughter loves these.
Thank you.
These might be easier if it's her first period.
These are really environmentally friendly.
Yeah, Chris Rufo shared that out. Of course, I think that was
What am I looking for?
that was a leak. I wonder where was Wally in that image? Of course, it was the person with the beanie on and the massive trans flag emblazoned on his question mark.
So that's a bit
shirt.
weird. It's a bit funny because like all the ladies there were saying, you know, this is for her period, right? Mm-hmm. Which
No, this is for his period, apparently. I mean, come on. I know my girlfriend, when we're in an argument, will occasionally accuse me of being on a period if I'm getting particularly flustered about something, but I've never felt the need to go out and shop for it, just in case, you know?
No, I just, to be honest, I don't know why Chris is upset about this. It's kind of based, because all the women in the shop are like, yeah, this is for women. Like, not playing into the nonsense at all.
Well, yeah, but the point is it's supposed to be trying to normalise this whole idea, and plus they are explicitly showing the trans flag
the
on the shirt.
animator has their desires.
It is quite insidious, and I'm pretty sure, actually, that Disney have used that same character model before in different shows, or at least one that looks very, very similar, to denote just this is a man. So it's actually providing kids not only with here's the political partisanship for you, it's also distorting their view on what a trans man would actually look like. I mean, I'm sure people might disagree a little bit more if they threw in Elliot Page. It might display a different kind of character to trans men as they actually are in real life mostly.
I don't know because I'm not familiar with the show, but I just I actually find it funny. I don't know why people are picking up on the fact that the women are just like, yeah, these are for your daughter. Yeah, these were great for my daughter. And it's just like, yeah, the women. Not anything else, which presumably the animator who's putting in that trans flag doesn't agree with. Would agree with the NHS version of life.
Well, potentially, but once again, I think the whole idea is, yes, it's for women, but also these women have identified themselves and their daughters as women, therefore we can trust because they, being women, know what a woman is, but also you can't judge because a trans man could also be looking for tampons for their period, which is true. But also, like,
That's
weird.
obviously a woman.
Yeah, there's obviously a woman. But anyway, and now that we've taken a look at some of that stuff, let's take a look at what, if you bring the Twitter back up, some of the Detrans stories that have been going around on Twitter recently. Now, this one came out on June 13th. I'm saying it like it's a box office, like a premiere of a film. But this person, Tulip R, I believe, is a person who transitioned from male to female and then has detransitioned, and he is a moderator for the Detrans subreddit. So he's very sympathetic to those people, and he's been through it himself. And he posted this thread, and shockingly enough, it got about 40,000 likes, like we can see. And I do find it interesting because normally Twitter tries to censor these things. But it seems that people cottoned onto this one before Twitter got the chance to censor, because I did see some tweets from people, including Tulip, whose real name is Richie. I'll just refer to him as Richie. Richie was pointing out and calling out that Twitter did sort of try and hide this thread from people. But calling Twitter out seems to have got them to pull back on that. And he also got mass hate from the online trans community from this, because of course he did. And I'm going to read a little bit of this, and apologies, because these sorts of stories are always pretty harrowing and are always pretty nasty to listen to. So apologies if this is upsetting to anybody, but I think it's important to know about what's going on here. So he says, I want to tell everyone what they took from us, what irreversible really means, and what that reality looks like for us, meaning the detransitioners. I have no sensation in my crotch at all. You could stab me with a knife and I wouldn't know. The entire area is numb, like it's shell-shocked and unable to comprehend what happened even 4 years on. No one told me that the base area of your penis is left, and it can't be removed, meaning you're left with a literal stump inside that twitches. When you take testosterone and your libido returns, you wake up with morning wood just without the tree. And he says, I wish this was a joke. Then there's the act of going to the toilet. It takes me about 10 minutes to empty my bladder. It's extremely slow, painful, because it dribbles no matter how much I relax. It will then just go all over the entire area, leaving me soaked. So after cleaning myself up, I'll find moments later that my underwear is wet, no matter how much I wiped, and it slowly dribbles out for the best part of an hour. It's an awful, horrendous thing to go through. Now I get to the point where I'm detransitioned, and the realization that this is permanent is catching up with me. During transition, I was obsessive and deeply unwell. I cannot believe they were allowed to do this to me, even after all of the red flags. I wasn't even asked if I wanted to freeze sperm or wanted kids. In my obsessive, deeply unwell state, they just nodded along and didn't tell me the realities, what life would be like. And when you see the Democrats trying to pass the transgender Bill of Rights, and when you see companies like Disney and Halifax trying to promote this sort of stuff as if it's perfectly normal, and as if these surgeries and operations that people go through to affirm their true gender are just completely normal, no risk, no threat of anything happening, and then you read something like
100%
this.
100% reversible, as you're always told.
100% reversible. If you get that double mastectomy, then you'll be able to, and then you change your mind, you'll be able to grow back your breast. Well, not grow them back, but we'll be able to implant new breasts on you. If you, what was one of them?
The TF2 medic who's just like, bonds grow back, don't worry.
Yeah. If you go on puberty blockers and decide that you don't want to anymore, then it will have no permanent or damaging effects, even though that they can vastly reduce your what's the term? Your ability to have children.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Sorry, I've just that word completely slipped my mind for a second there. And it can also mean that I think if people go onto puberty blockers past a certain age, there is like studies have shown that there's a 100% chance that they will later go on to further surgery and further medical procedures. So it is very, very damaging. And this person, Richie, went through about, I think, 6 years overall of waiting list.
More of this. I don't know if we want to read it out. It's just horrible. But I just love the message at the end. It's just F everyone who let this happen. I mean, fair enough.
Yeah, and he has been approached by a number of people to interviews. I think he's decided to stop doing interviews now because it was getting a bit much for him, especially with the mass hate that he was getting. The thread got mass reported.
So he says, I didn't delete anything, by the way, because there were a few tweets that were deleted. Thread got mass reported, meaning that people just went in and tried to hide. Yeah,
the trans community and the trans activists, who, of course, love everybody and don't want any hate for anybody, mass reported this because it goes against the narrative. And he has done an interview with the Times, which if we move to the next one, we can play a little bit of this clip just to see the mindset that he was in when he started this, and also basically how even as an adult in his 20s, he got groomed into this. So let's take a look.
I had a lot of mental health issues. I was on a high dose of SSRIs for anxiety and depression, and I just became, I would say, like, overtaken by this idea, and I was very obsessed with it, and it just kind of came out of nowhere. I remember reading it online about gender dysphoria, and I went on to these internet forums or chat rooms in 2013 and 2014, and they kind of like diagnose each other, but it's run by like much older men who, I don't know, I don't want to disrespect anyone, but it seemed like they really wanted me to transition more than I did. And it was very much do or die. You have to do this now while you're young. Look at me, I'm going to regret it. You should do it now because you'll be able to look like a woman, no problem. And then that just set us on an obsessive mission, but I was very poorly mentally.
Yeah, so if that can happen to somebody who is in now their mid to late, like I think early to mid 30s, so obviously somebody who was classified as an adult when that started happening, when they started to get groomed, imagine what can happen to your children. And he mentions there, the online forums, it was a lot of older men. Are you aware of autogynephilia?
Is that the one where people have like a fetish for like chopped off limbs or something?
Not chopped off limbs. It's where men. This is what you tend to see in transgender women who are like in their mid-50s and older. Is men who have a fetish, a sexual fetish for being able to see themselves as a woman, and therefore will go ahead with the transition. This is something that's been studied, and when the person who discovered it did discover it and released a paper on it, of course, she got massive amounts of hate from the online trans community, and I think she got cancelled and kicked out of her university. But I would not be surprised if on these forums there is some kind of vicarious autogynephilia going on, where these older men who don't necessarily who at this age aren't necessarily able to see themselves as the ideal woman that they want to be, get a kind of kick and a thrill out of getting younger people to do it who might be able to look more like the ideal woman in their eyes. That's just a theory on my part, but I wouldn't be surprised if they are getting some kind of sick thrill out of it, because I mean, I don't put anything past these kinds of degenerates personally to do this to somebody who is obviously ill, very mentally unwell, and very unstable and vulnerable.
You don't all help that. Destroying your body.
Yep, exactly. And then you get the responses from the turds, the online trans community on Twitter. I just looked through the quote tweets, and if you go to this link that I put on here for the Times Radio little clip that they got, just go through the quote tweets and see the absolute vitriol and hate that is being spewed at this poor, vulnerable man. And this Jade, for instance, who's got the trans flag in her
anime profile picture. Why not?
Yeah, anime profile picture, and we can see right behind there they've got, I think, a bit of the pride flag and the trans flag behind that anime profile picture. So this is all lining up very nicely. Where are people getting this fast-tracked gender-affirming healthcare that trans people can't get? So your life has been ruined. Gimme some of that. Is what they're saying.
I have heard the argument. Rose of Dawn has mentioned it. Like the waiting list for transitioning is quite long because of the NHS backlog and whatnot. But I imagine this person probably did it long before this. So The idea
Yeah.
of this is impossible.
Also, notice right here that they're saying that trans people can't get. So what they're doing is excommunicating Richie. Because if you detransition, that does not mean that you are somebody who was trans and got
are you
regret
still
or
part
something.
of the trans race,
It's
frankly, not
it's,
community?
No, what they do is it's not that you're no longer part of the trans community, is they frame it as though you were never trans at all. Because, like I say, it's an complete excommunication because you are a heretic in the eyes of the almighty Pride Church. There's another one pointing out, oh, isn't it funny how it's only ever the ones who regret it who feel that they were fast-tracked? Yes, maybe because no amount of waiting time is ever going to be enough for some people who it's just going to be a terrible decision, no matter the circumstances. And then there's this one, which I saw primarily because Ash Sarkar, of course, retweeted it. I feel very sorry for Richie that he regretted transitioning. But he was 31 when he consented to the surgery, 6 years after seeking help and 4 years after going private because of long waiting lists. Are we seriously saying he was too young to consent to fast-tracked treatment? And on that, once again, I would say maybe the point is that no matter how long this procedure takes, there is a high chance that you will end up regretting and either detransitioning or killing yourself, or sadly both. Because for a lot of people, the initial problems that cause the gender dysphoria have nothing to do with how you feel about your sex, your biological sex, and a lot to do with other issues, maybe home issues, maybe just general mental health problems. And this is being treated as a fix-all, one-size-fits-all solution.
But also the
to this
idea
sort of
that, say you've got problems with the way your body is. That's that is the dysphoria, right? What he ends up as he described, I feel like that's probably going to make you feel more unnatural than what you had before, surely.
It does. This is what I've seen from a lot of trans people who have even older trans women who are like near their late 40s. I read an article, I think it was in the Telegraph or something, from this person saying, okay, when I initially transitioned, I still didn't feel any better. And I was trying to live up to this standard of I am a woman now.
But
and
you've still got a piece of your...
Yeah.
It's just...
And he realised that it was only when he... I'll say she to be respectful. That when she realised, no, I'm not a woman. I am a trans woman. That is something completely different. I am separate from womanhood. I am something else. That she started to feel better about herself. Because once again, the standards that trans activists and other people put, like trans women are women, is just setting an unnaturally and unattainably high standard for these people to hit that is going to make them feel worse.
Impossible to hit.
It is impossible.
Sorry,
to
I
hit.
can't get over the description he had of the fact that he's still got morning wood in the morning, but
Yeah, it's horrifying.
Awful.
It is honestly awful.
But could you imagine trying to be a woman and you think that that's going to physically become, and then you've got that? I mean, that's just. I mean, you would feel just. I mean, I want to say I'd feel like an abomination or something because you've got both at that point.
Yeah, that is the thing, and not to speak of some of the other issues that can come from drilling a hole through the pelvis into the colon for this sort of stuff. But I don't want to.
I don't like this topic.
I don't want to go into that any further. But just for one last one, there was another one that Richie himself did share, and this person, Soren, is not somebody who is necessarily outside of the leftist sphere. You can go on her account, and she's still, she's got Karl Marx all. Don't scroll too much on this one, John,
Jesus God, yeah,
because there is some awful pictures in this, so please don't scroll too far. And I don't want to put everyone who's viewing at home through that right now, especially if you might be eating dinner, because I've already probably curdled your stomach enough. But enough to say that even people who are still within the leftist sphere, people who still believe in all of this sort of stuff, have still got lots of issues with how the medical procedures are handled, because this person talks about the double mastectomy that she had, and she got massive bruising, blood loss, terrible treatment from medical staff, people consistently fobbing her off because it's like, no, that's just normal. But you're supposed to bleed like that. You're supposed to get all this terrible bruising around where your breasts were. Don't worry about it. And eventually realized, okay, I'm not actually trans. She's like, oh, I still support trans and trans rights and all this sort of stuff. But she can at least post that there is some terrible, awful procedures that go on in this sort of stuff, and no aftercare for these people. They will get you through. They will get you through the revolving door, and then ignore that you ever existed. But once again, it is still impressive to me that these stories are starting to get more traction and more visibility in the mainstream public eye than they used to, especially on Twitter. So I do honestly believe the detrans wave is coming, and God help everyone involved in this business when it does. Thank you for watching that segment from the podcast Lotus Eaters. If you enjoyed that, you can sign up and become a member on our website to access our premium content. For instance, the most recent contemplations from Josh and John talking about the wisdom of Wabi Sabi. If you're interested in following Josh on social media, you can find him on Getter at Josh_firm. Thank you and goodbye.